Welcome everyone to our webinar today. My name is Stephanie and I'm a content marketer here at eLearning Brothers. Today we are going to be talking about editing in Camtasia 18. This webinar will be recorded, and if you have any questions during the webinar, we'll be ready to answer your questions in the questions panel throughout the webinar. So feel free, go ahead, type all your thoughts, questions, whatever in there. We will get to as many as we can. And if we cannot get to your question, we will do our best to follow up in the webinar recap. Just so you know, one of the things we like to do after the webinar is try to follow up as soon as possible, sometimes just to get feedback, most of the time to touch base, find out if anyone needs some one-on-one clarification about the webinar topic after the fact. And we're going to be giving everyone attending a free eLearning Brothers account if you don't already have one. So you can look forward to having some fun with that. Today we have Andrew Townsend, our video specialist, with us. Thank you so much for joining, Andrew. We are all really excited to hear what you have to share. And now, without further ado, I'll turn the time over to you.
Hey everybody, thanks Stephanie for that fun intro. I would like to first, because we're talking about Camtasia 18, I would really quickly like to know what our audience is using, if they're using Camtasia 18, if they're using Camtasia 9. So let's go ahead and put that poll up on the screen if you wouldn't mind. Great, so go ahead and vote. There's Camtasia 8, or if you're on a Mac, it was a Camtasia 2, Camtasia 9, or if you're on Mac, Camtasia 3. And then TechSmith just got all of them consolidated together into Camtasia 18. So let us know what you're using, and go ahead.
So far, Andrew, it looks like about half of our attendees are using Camtasia 9, but we do have about a quarter of them already on Camtasia 18. And then we've got a few people still using 8 and some who are not using Camtasia yet. But after this webinar, I bet they will be.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right, we're going to give it like one more second and then we'll close the poll. And then you can see those results right now.
Okay, 46% is on 9, the older version. I'd imagine most people are using video editors like Premiere Pro. If you're looking for more scalability in projects and things, or maybe you're just an iMovie person, that's a thing too. But okay, so we got a lot of people that have already jumped onto 18. A lot of people that are at least familiar with this user interface because of Camtasia 9, and quite a few of you still back on Camtasia 8. That's awesome. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Excellent. Okay, so this is Camtasia 18. If you're on Camtasia 9, it looks pretty much the same. The big difference being that there's the library is now a drop or in this ribbon instead of being a toggle here inside the media section. Just to reiterate, this is going to be kind of like you're just spying on me editing. I'm just going to start working on a project. I'll talk my way through it. If you have questions at any point in the project, please let us know in the questions panel, and Stephanie will bring those up to me as we move along. But do know that the goal here is at the end to have a finished video that talks about customizable courseware with my dear friend Thomas. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here in Camtasia 18 is import my files. So Thomas is a developer inside of this video folder. Here's his name, Thomas, and here's a video file and an audio file. So I'm going to highlight them both and drag them into my media bin. Then I'm going to drag my video down onto the timeline, and I like putting it on the second track so that the audio goes underneath. This is because I started editing back on Adobe Premiere. Back when I was going to school, I used Premiere the most, and it always separates the audio below and the video above, and that's an old habit that has been fine. It's my preference. That's how I like to do it. So the audio was recorded separately. The camera also recorded some audio, but it was a great deal far away from Thomas than the microphone that's clipped right here to his lapel. So now that we have these, we'll just want to sync them. Now, I didn't clap for Thomas's. A lot of the time when I record it, I'll clap so that there's an audio spike for both. But as I am seeing this, there are some patterns in the audio. So there was a fairly quiet section here. I can move that around to try to line that up. And let's just zoom in on this section. Now, to make sure I can really move it around well, I'm going to hold down Control as I move the video around. That moves it frame by frame. So that should line up. You guys won't be able to hear the audio. Sorry, you'll have to trust me that it's synced as I sync this audio. So I'm going to hit play. Okay, it did. That is correctly synced. If we zoom even more, you can see those waves are pretty spot on. Now, to make sure that I don't lose that sync again, I'm going to come back to the very beginning where he's just talking about nothing, and highlight them both and hit S for split, and then delete this beginning section. So now if I accidentally bump this and it gets off, I know that all I have to do is line it up with the very beginning of the bottom section, and they're now synced. Now, because there are two audio channels coming in, I'm going to right click on the video's audio, click separate audio and video, and then delete the video's audio. So now the only audio that's coming through is the audio from Thomas's microphone. Okay, I could also group these together if I wanted to. That's one tactic I used to use a lot, but I found that if I needed to make edits, digging down inside the group was an extra step that I didn't want to do with a video that's this size. With the bigger videos, if I'm dealing with a lot of different tracks and a lot of different media, groups are a lot more handy. And just for ease, I'm going to go ahead and click the end as well with S for a split, and then get rid of these. Great. Now I'm going to find the important part of this interview to make sure that I don't have any extras. So I'll play it, hitting spacebar. Okay, this is it right at the beginning. I can kind of tell where that is, but because that's where the most continuous audio is, where Thomas was talking and giving us his opinion on customizable courseware. So I'm going to hit spacebar again and play it through to here. Excellent. So there's the chunk, the meatiest part of his interview, all put together here. Now there is a segment at the end where he gives us another idea, one last closing thought as a part of his interview. So I'm going to come to it and get just the beginning of it. He's thinking, there he goes. So this is where he really picks it up. I'm going to split it and then get rid of this middle chunk. Move this end closer. Now, these are different clips, and so it's a very obvious jump as it switches from one to the other. So to make it so that's less obvious of a jump, and to help it become more connected, more emotional, I guess, to help your viewer feel the change in the content, on the second section, I'm just going to zoom in quite a bit on his face. Right about there, and still keep him on the rule of thirds line here in the center. And now as we progress from sentence to sentence and it jump cuts forward, it feels a little more natural. It doesn't, I'm not a fan of the headroom here. I'm actually going to just raise it up using the arrow keys a little bit to be right there. That feels more comfortable to me. He's handed off to our customers. Hope they get a really great experience with it. Cut in thinking we have many amazing people on our team. Okay, great. So that worked out well. Let's double check the end here. You know what? I'm actually fine. I'm not going to try to trim the beginning because of what I know I'm going to be doing later. I do want to edit both of these audio tracks, but I kind of want them to be done exactly the same. And they are the same audio track originally, so I can right-click on this gap in the middle and select Stitch Media, and that makes it so when I click on the one, it acts still as only one media object. Okay, so now you can kind of see, according to the waveforms, that
Hey,
it's,
Andrew.
let's grab a
I think
question.
we
Yes.
we have a question specifically about those two audio files. Is there a reason you're keeping both of them and not just using the best one?
They're totally different subjects. He gave one big thought in the response to one interview question, and then we ask the second interview question, and then the second segment is his second answer. So they're not the same thing. I'm sorry. It'd be way easier if you guys could hear it, but you can't with GoToWebinar. You won't be able to hear.
We promise you it's a really riveting answer, though.
You know what? We'll get this published. Not today. You'll see this video on our social media pages in a week or two.
And then while you're here, we had one other question. Is there a way to move the edited content automatically to the start of the track?
Oh, so right now this is just kind of floating, but you really want it to be down here?
Yeah,
I
that's
think
what
that's
they're
what you're talking
asking.
about. I don't know of any ways that just say snap to the beginning. To solve this, let's say I'm zoomed way in here, and I know that if I come here and try to move this section, it's not going to move that other video section, right? Because of this. They're not stitched together like I stitched the audio. So a lot of the time, the trick I do is I click this magnifying glass, which I did by habit just to show you guys this. It brings all of the media on the timeline into view. So if you had, let's make another, bring this down again. If you had another chunk of video over here, but you're working over here and you need to move all of the pieces together, you hit this magnifying glass and it shows you all of your material. This is also handy if you're editing a lot of stuff and you kind of keep your timeline ending as the garbage. I do that a lot of the time. When I'm cutting or slicing things up and moving them around, I'll often put things back here at the end while I'm working on the project and then drag them over here. It also helps if I want a part of the interview to go here. So I split it and drag it here. And then I want this middle part of the interview to go here, but I know I still want to use the interview. Rather than deleting these and then dragging it down and finding them again, I just leave them over here kind of as a work in progress section of my timeline. And this magnifying glass tool is extremely useful when it comes to that. And if I do that, then I can highlight everything and easily drag it to the beginning of my timeline. Hope that
All
answered the
right.
question, sort of.
I think so. We'll let you go back to what you were doing now.
Great, thank you. Please keep your questions coming. Stephanie's all about getting those questions answered. Okay, I hit zoom in. Okay, so now I need this audio to kind of be leveled and potentially cleaned up. You guys won't be able to hear the difference again, GoToWebinar, but you'll be able to watch the waveforms change and kind of see what's going on. So right now there's little spikes. These are probably from the letter T or the letter P. When he says to, or I can't think of a P word, pout, those are things where we give a lot of air. Now that's normally with microphones like this where you're speaking right into them and every bit of air is making a difference. It could also be when he starts a sentence saying, and that's why we did that. And so they're getting these spikes, which aren't bad, but he said once we have that content, so he's bringing emphasis. So in order to keep that emphasis, you still want those spikes a little bit to be in your timeline. So we don't want to completely get rid of those. Let's go into audio effects, and let's come to volume leveling, and we're going to drag it to this audio. And because it's stitched, it's going to apply it to all. So this is the default volume variation of medium. And as you can see, it really hacked out those spikes, those emphasis spikes. Not a huge fan of that, so I like to come in and just change that to low. It still keeps some of these emphasis spikes, and as we drag this line up to increase the volume, you'll see those emphasis bits are still coming up here and there. Depending on what I am putting down on top of this audio, I have two settings really. If this is going to be standalone, if this is the only audio that's going to be coming out, then I keep the waveforms generally right at the green line. It's about, let's see, it's not giving me my percentage, but that's how I measure it. So it starts about here, and I raise it up until the waveforms touch the green line, which is right there. If there's going to be other sound, whether it be music, sound effects, things like that, that will also be competing for the audio, I'll drag it all the way up until those waveform lines are touching the top of the waveform. If you go too high, it'll begin to clip and it'll sound pretty pretty rough. So you don't want to get it much louder than that. For this, I am going to have a soundtrack over that, so I'm going to keep it where it's at. Now, when I play it, I can also hear a little bit of air conditioning hum in the audio. So I'm going to drag the TechSmith's noise removal effect down onto it, and you'll see it has sensitivity and amount sliders. With the default, when I play it, it sounds okay, but it's definitely starting to clip his voice as well. And I would rather have crisp voice and a little tiny bit of air conditioning noise than no air conditioning noise and a obviously compressed voice. So I will often change the amount from 20 to 10 to half it and then see what that sounds like. And for this purpose, it does sound good, but there's other, you can also adjust your sensitivity, maybe make it -5 and see if that sounds any better. If you have long segments of silence, you can also highlight those segments like this, and then click Analyze, and it'll analyze that section as being the expectation for what silence is, and any noise that's inside of that silence, it'll search out that noise everywhere else in your video and remove it. But we're not going to do that today. It sounded fine with 0 sensitivity and 10 for the amount. Okay, so my audio and video are now set. These are good. Do we have any questions before I move on to the next section?
You are doing great right now, Andrew.
Okay, moving on. Here we go. So this next section, this series of videos has all of the same introduction and it has all of the same outro. The audio is a little bit different though. So I'm going to cover those in that order. We're going to do the introduction, the outro, and then the music, background music. Okay, so I have already built, we began these videos, building these videos in Camtasia 9. And because I knew I was going to be doing a ton of them, probably 15 or so, we built one background that we really liked and then added it to the Camtasia 9 library. If you're not already doing that with videos that you make regularly, you definitely should. It saves an unbelievable amount of time, and it also helps to have consistency in your projects. Now, what I did is I went into Camtasia 9, into the library object, which is similar to this, and I right-clicked on it, and I came down to Export Asset, and then named it. Now, Camtasia 18 will read the assets from Camtasia 9. So I'm going to come back into my file folder here. I'm going to go back up to this root folder, and this is the CC stuff, the customizable courseware stuff. This is the library objects that I already built in Camtasia 9 that match that look. So even if I have a project that was built in Camtasia 9, I can get the exact same look in Camtasia 18 using this. So I'm going to click and drag that into my library, and it's going to ask me, where do you want to add this object? Do I want to create a new library to store it? Do I want to put it in my Camtasia 9.1? Do I want to put it in the default Camtasia 18 folder? I'm going to put it in a folder that I created, a library folder I created called eLearning Brothers. That's where I put my things. You can already see here, there's the Daydream, the intros, the rhombus overlays, the jewel theme, the whole theme, a circus overlay, some other eLearning Brothers marketing materials here. So I'm going to put it in eLearning Brothers and click import. And here it is. So it's in this folder. There's the 15-second courseware ad, the customizable courseware background, the title items, and the eLearning Brothers white logo. If I double click on those, it shows me what they look like. Oh, you know what? It's not showing up on the solid black. We'll drag it onto the timeline. You'll be able to see it there. Okay, so for the intro, I want the customizable courseware background. So we're going to drag that down, put it on the timeline, and there it is. I'm gonna, yep, takes up the whole screen. Now it starts black because it does fade in. Now this is just an MP4 that was exported, but all it is, I don't know if you can tell, there's a blue background with a with some Boku lights in the background, and it's moving slowly to the left. And then we have these a PNG of these orange spots that I set their transparency to about 50% and have them moving the opposite direction. So the whole time it plays, it's nice and slow, but it's also interesting. And that was done using the animations pane. Here we just put those two layers down on top of one another, drug down a custom animation like this. And then at the end of the animation, we said we want you to be over here. So then when the animation starts to the left, slides like that, but we have it running slowly over time. So that's that background. Now it needs text over the top of it. So we're going to come back to the library. Here's the customizable courseware title. Drag it down and put it on top. Why buy customizable courseware? That's very default title. Let's kind of let me figure out what it was Thomas was talking about here. Long process, takes a lot of awesome individuals to come together to build customizable courseware. The thing it starts with is, okay, instructional design. So this is a group. I'm going to open this. In fact, I'm just going to completely disband this group, ungroup. So now we can see these two individual pieces. We'll zoom in to see it a little more. And to make it easier to edit the top white section, I'm going to hide this orange section so I don't accidentally click on it. Okay, so I'm going to double click and select, let's see, we'll say who, oh my gosh, I can spell this, who builds customizable courseware. There is another key Camtasia 18 component to keep in mind here. If I brought in a theme, but it wasn't matching the theme as this video with color or text or the brand or whatever, Camtasia 18 now has these themes. So I can select a theme that I want this text annotation to obey. Let's say the ELB theme, eLearning Brothers theme. And what it did is it went to the default orange and to the correct font, the default font. So when I come in here to the colors, there's this drop down for different themes, and it gives me the basic colors for this theme. So it has the orange of eLearning Brothers, it has the dark blue of eLearning Brothers, which you can't see because it blends right in with the correct blue of the background. There's a gray that is one of our branding colors, and then there's also this white, and then a secondary, oh, actually, that's all I've done. I've only done the 4. White is correct for this video. I'm also going to show you that you can manage themes, create a new theme. So you can rename the theme or create a new theme, and then we'll call it example. And I can give my background, foreground, anything. We'll say this one should be this red. Say this one should be this dark blue. This one should be this pinkish color. This one should be this, I don't know, that yellow. You can create another accent, but and you can also create a default annotation background. You can also come in and make sure that certain fonts are your default font, like Orbitron. And now if I was to say this who builds needs to be by that theme, I can come in, select the theme, click example, and it changes it to the correct font and the default color. And I can come and change it to these other colors that, oh, whoops, the colors in here are still the ELB theme. There we go. Here's our example colors. So we can change those colors to be what we just built. All right, so I'm going to switch that back to the eLearning Brothers, change this back to the ELB theme of white. Okay, who builds? Now I can unhide this one, and those look pretty good. They'll fade on the screen. I do want to give a little bit more emphasis to customizable courseware, so I'm going to come into my animations and create a custom animation, drag it onto the orange, make it well, we'll change the full length in a second. Here at the end, and I want it to just be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to increase the text size inside that box to be about that big. So now as the video starts, it looks a little jittery. That doesn't look great. Come on now. 183. Did it change it for all of them? grow. There we go. Is that going to grow? It's a little jittery. It's not handling the minuscule change very well. I'm going to right click on that and change the enable easing to linear, and then have it so it's already growing as it fades on the screen, and it doesn't finish growing by the time it's off the screen. So when I play it, it grows. Man, they are just dancing. I'm not sure if you guys are seeing that. That's something I would need to play with a little more to make sure that that's going to work correctly so that it looks good and doesn't bug me right now. I'm going to get rid of that. Questions?
We do have a couple questions on this section that you've just covered. So we had one, so when you were working with the library and bringing in the files,
Yes.
do you add the zip file to the library or to the project file?
I added it to the library. The libzip file, I just drug it straight to the library, and that adds to the library. Now, when I drug it onto my timeline, it also added it to the media bin. So this CC background that's an MP4 is now here in my media bin. The annotations aren't. Annotations don't show up in the media bin, but anything else that you build, any PNGs or JPEGs or MP4s or anything like that will show up in your media bin if it's in your timeline. Otherwise, it just lives in the library.
All right, great. And then Candace was wondering if you can save a theme so that you can share it with other people.
Absolutely, same exact way. If I have, let's say, this ELB theme that has the white logo, the CC title, the CC background, and the 15-second courseware ad, if I want to send all of that to somebody else, I right-click on it, export assets, name it whatever I want to name it, and then I send that to them and they can import it into their Camtasia.
Awesome. And then let's see, we have a few questions that are kind of overarching questions, so I'm saving them for the end. So Stephanie, Paul, Lou, I'm not ignoring you. They're great questions and we'll try to get to them at the end. And then, all right, that looks like we've got everything for now. So we'll let you go back.
Okay, great. Now, one thing I like to do with these videos is to not make anybody wait for information. So I will actually have Thomas speaking in the background during this introduction. So I'm going to highlight everything and drag it underneath this file we just built. And so it'll fade in, he'll be speaking, they'll fade out, and then it'll show him. But I do want him to fade in. So I'm going to come in a little closer here to the beginning, shrink this background to be the same length as these others, and then they'll go to black, and then it should fade up to Thomas, not just snap like it does here. I'm using the caret keys, which is the comma and the period, to go back and forth one frame, so you can see how it just pops from nothing. Oh, you know what? And we'll also want to fade out this background, so we'll stick a fade on that. So it should go from, as it fades out, it's fading into Thomas's face. Not a fan of that. So I'm going to highlight just the video file, not the audio. This is another really handy part of keeping them separate. This is why I don't like to group them in this kind of a video. Just the video, and I'm going to shrink it down to start right here at right as the other video is ending. So we'll carry it through, and it still pops up, but the text is now fading to black. So I'll grab this fade transition, whoops, and drag it down to the beginning of this video of my friend Thomas. Scroll slowly to the side, and you can see he fades up as he's talking. So just to double check to make sure this is working, I'm going to push play. So he says, so our customizable courseware is a long process that takes a lot of really awesome individuals to actually come together. Okay, so that worked out really nicely. Just to make sure that it sounds great, I'm going to grow this bottom audio track, and I'm going to double click right as he begins to talk on the timeline right here. And I'm going to double click at the beginning on the green line, so that creates these audio points. And then I can drag this first one where he's not talking all the way down to the ground. So just so that if there is a little tiny bit of room noise, which there is in this one, just a tiny bit, it's when you hit play, when somebody hits play on Facebook or on Twitter or wherever, they're not hit with shh, it fades slowly up into his talking voice, and it just sounds so much better. And it well, you'll hear it. not here, but it does sound much better. So there's that. That is now fixed. We have the intro built, and with Thomas talking here. I do also want to introduce Thomas. Let's see if I have that. Yep, right here. So I have another ELB file here called ELB bump and lower thirds. And just by way of teaching, if you've never seen Camtasia 18, you can manage different libraries. So here's my Camtasia 2018 library. Here's my Camtasia 9.1 library. Here's my default library. It's empty. My eLearning Brothers library. As you can tell here, I work mostly in my eLearning Brothers library. If you are working for a bunch of different projects and they all have lots of different assets, it's nice to have multiple libraries to be able to toggle through to keep track of your materials. So I'm going to drag this ELB bump and lower thirds down onto my timeline. I'm going to ungroup it because it is two pieces.
I think we've got a couple questions about what you just did with the audio.
Okay.
So a couple people want to know if when you move to the video, that does not or does break the sync between the video and the audio.
They are unlinked, and as I cut it, I was just shrinking the length, not changing the speed, not doing anything else. So they're still perfectly synced.
Great. And then there was one person who asked to create those points on the audio track. Did you just double click or is there a special trick?
Double click the green line. You can also right click and select add audio point, but double clicking sure seems better to me.
Yeah, that's a lot faster. All right, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so I brought down this item. It was grouped and it has this introduction bump that you've probably seen before. Big explosion and a lower third. Now I don't need the first part, so I'm going to highlight it and delete it. I do want this lower third, so I'm going to drag it over. And where should that come in? I do want to give a little bit of time, but not enough time that you actually start wondering who this is. So we'll play it and we'll have it come in right there, the nice little break after it fades in. So your mind can say, okay, here's a person talking, and then, okay, here's who that person is. Don't have it jump in too early, and you definitely don't want it jumping in too late. I'm going to select fit so this gets a little bit bigger. We'll drag this down too so you can see. All right, so to edit this text, I'm going to double click on it, and that'll highlight all of it. Then I'm going to double click again to only highlight this top section. I'm going to highlight this whole place and put Thomas Reyes Cairo. And his title will go down here. He is a project manager. So there we go. And all of this is animated using a behavior. The behavior can be edited up here. And I did all of that previously before I created the template that I imported into my library. So all I have to do is change the text and it's ready to go. Same goes for that lower third animation. If I play it here, slowly pops out, his name comes out, these nice little white paint splatters play over in the background, and then it animates off. So that's all I have to do for that one. Nice and quick. Built it once in Camtasia 9, added it to my library, very quickly can add that and move that around and edit it. This is just like, you can do the same kind of things with all of the templates that are in the eLearning Brothers library for Camtasia. So when I drug that fade onto the timeline, it accidentally added it to the end as well. So if I zoom in down here, I definitely don't want this to fade from one to the next like that. So I'm going to highlight that and delete it. And now it'll do that jump cut that we had worked so hard to get to look good previously. Okay, so now we're set there. Let's go into the end here and start working on the outro. The outro is going to have the same principle as the intro. I do want this customizable courseware background to pop up. I do want Thomas to still be talking when that comes up, just as he's finishing up his last thought. That's perfect. He starts to say, most of the work is already done for you. You save a ton of time using customizable courseware because we've already created the content. All you have to do is edit that customizable courseware a little bit to give the look and feel that you want. However, you did notice that it just jumped to black and then fade it in. So we're going to do the same thing as we did at the beginning. We're going to take this and drag it to match at the beginning, and then we're going to put the fade effect on the end. So he fades out, it fades up, and there's the closer. So now let's come back into my library and bring in this white logo that I talked about. Oh, it didn't move the actual asset pieces. That's not great. You know what? I'm going to find that really quick. Do we have any questions while I dig for this?
Well, we did have one question about exactly what the audio points are used for.
Sure. Those increase and decrease the audio, the volume. That's what they're for. So for here at the beginning, and we'll highlight that again and increase it. I want it to be silent at the very beginning and slowly get to its correct volume point by the time he starts speaking. And you know what? We're going to do the same thing at the end. So let's just demonstrate that again. So he finishes his thought right here. He says content, and it's done right there. There's some other audio points here, or other audio spikes. So I'm just going to move this down because we don't need those. But I don't want it to end with any sort of air conditioning noise or anything like that. So I will double click out here. What they do, whoops, double clicked on the actual item instead of on the green line. Every time you create an audio point, it creates a hinge. So I created a hinge here because I don't want to change anything to the left of that, but I do want to change it here. So I grab the audio point and drag it down. And so it just makes it so it gets gradually quieter. And any room noise that may be there, anything like that, will gradually get quieter as well. It will really increase the quality of your audio. Now it's already very, very quiet. I mean, you're not even seeing any audio at all. So it's not going to make a huge difference here. But sometimes that can make a big difference to be able to have that small editable change. If I also, let's say, in fact he does, right here at the end as he's finishing his sentence, a lot of people like to finish their sentences by petering off into a quieter state. I don't know why that's the human nature of doing that, but we do that. And so what I'll do is I'll create an audio point right here where it's at the correct volume level, and another one right in here, and then another one right before we drop the audio altogether. So now I have 4 audio points, and all of them are acting as hinges. And if I raise this middle part, it only raises and lowers the audio that's inside that segment. So if I raise that up to 500% and play it, then he doesn't get as quiet right at that segment. Does that answer your question? That's how you use audio points. They're little hinges for your volume.
Awesome. And then we did have a question. Do you have a cheat sheet of sorts of recommendations of what to edit first? And you'll have to refresh my memory. I think we have done some webinars or blogs on how you set up your video projects.
Yeah,
that
we
might be
have.
able to link to.
We'll get this out in the follow-up email, but there's definitely a file structure that kind of helps. I did a blog about the file structure that I use. And then we also did a webinar on hotkeys and shortcuts and best practices, and we'll get that out as well. And both of those will be in regards to Camtasia 9, which is the same as Camtasia 18 minus all of these library features. Editing first. I like to edit my video and audio first. You've seen this. And then build around that. The core of my content is what I build first, and then I build out the sides, whether that's the intro or the outro or the text over the screen. And in fact, if we have time, I'll show you how we also add closed captions to all of our videos so that we can publish them on Facebook, and when they autoplay, it autoplays with captions so someone doesn't have to click on it to be able to get that content. And then on Twitter, it doesn't have that ability, so we burn in the captions so that when it autoplays with those captions. LinkedIn has just added their own video streaming through their posts, and you can add closed captions through there as well, and then of course YouTube as well. So we'll talk about those, and that we've done webinars on closed captions that could go on for a very long time as well.
We have a lot of resources, and we will link to them all in the follow-up blog for you.
Yes, we will get there. All right, so the white ELB logo that I wasn't able to find, I do have the raw file, so I'll click and drag that into my media bin and then drag that onto my timeline. Zoom in on this ending piece again. Okay, and we'll have it start at the same time as the other background, and we'll have it run all the way to the end. And we do want it to be bigger. Now, I'm going to hold down Control as I make this bigger because it will keep it rooted in the center, and it will keep the dimensions the same. And we'll want it to be about that big. We'll lift it up and keep it centered. Excellent. And now we'll want to put information here at the bottom about customizable courseware. I have two choices. I can come into my annotations and just drag a raw one down, which we are going to do this time. Or another practice I'll do is I find another one that looks the same, like this guy, highlight it, copy it, paste it, and now that is ready to go wherever you want it to go. We're just going to put down a basic annotation because in Camtasia 18, it is very easy to just get that to match the look we want. Drag that down here, select the theme of ELB, change the color to the white. It's the right font. I want it to be wide, so I'm going to select, hold down Control and drag this out so it grows wide but stays centered. Double click, learn, or oh no, let's do visit elearningbrothers.com to, in all caps, schedule a free demo today. Great. And so that matches the font, matches the color, matches the look. Very easy using the theme inside of Camtasia 18. And that looks nice. We'll have it start and end at the same time as these other two. I'm going to shrink this so we can see a little more of our timeline. These two aren't fading on like the other backgrounds, so I'm going to highlight them both, select transitions, drag the fade. If I drag it toward the middle, you can see it adds it to the beginning and the end. I don't want to add this to the end, so I'm just going to add it to the beginning. So now as we move through here, you see all of it fades on together. Keep in mind, Thomas is still talking in the background as well. And that background is also moving because of the work we did previously. Thomas is done talking. We'll let this live on the screen a little bit longer. And then I'm going to highlight all of them, hit S for split, and then get rid of this extra stuff on the end. So this way, on some video players, like YouTube, a lot of the time at the end of a video, well, not YouTube anymore, they kind of switched their platform, but it would get to the end of the video and then stick on the very last, whoops, I'm shaking the table a lot. I apologize, everybody. It will stick on that last frame, and so this is why I don't want it to fade out. I don't want it to fade out and stick to black. I want it to fade out, or not fade out, and just stick to eLearning Brothers. Visit elearningbrothers.com to schedule a free demo today. Okay, so this is pretty much the video. We're gonna push play to see the beginning. It's probably looking very choppy to you guys. Thomas is talking, fades out, fades back into him continuing to talk. It's still synced. His lower thirds rolls out. Looks good. Fades out, good. And then at this section, it jump cuts to being closer. And then at the end, it fades and then fades into this closer, keeping in mind that he's still talking. Let's throw some music in here. I'm going to come into library, and for music, I'm just going to go to Camtasia 18, and they have music tracks here. They have a simple way. If I double click on these, it tells me, oh my gosh, that one's not for this. This one is also not for this. There we go, this one. So we're going to drag at the top down and put it onto this top track. And you can see it's very loud. We're going to want to make a lot of changes to this music track to be able to play in the background. It's a convenient length, however. Some of them are really, really long. Some of them are way too short. You got to keep that in mind. This is a 2-minute and 21-second video, 22-second video. So some music tracks just won't work very well. You can try to speed them up and slow them down. In the Mac version, you can speed them up and slow them down. It should work fine. In the PC version, if you slow them up, slow them down or speed them up, it will change the way the sound sounds. The faster it is, the higher pitched it gets. The slower it is, the lower pitched it gets. So keep that aware. keep that in your mind as you're working on these. Okay, so our audio of the speaking is at hitting the top, and this is also hitting the top. But I don't want to have music be really way too quiet that you can't hear it, and then really loud and overpowering my speaker. So I'm going to come in here to my audio effects and come to the volume leveling, the same one that we used down here on the speaking. But I'm way less concerned about giving emphasis to that music. So I'm going to let it just sit in the medium. I have no problem with it being a medium level. It decreased the general volume. It's still very loud, though. If I play it while Thomas is speaking, I can hear them both, but the music is very distracting. So I'm going to just drop the general volume all the way down to 17%. Let's see if that's okay. 17 is pretty good. I'm totally fine with that. And at the beginning, that works. There is a small break at the very beginning. So I'm going to zoom in and come back here. And you can see the music waits a beat or two before it starts playing. And I want the music to really kick off. So right before the music plays, I'm going to delete. I'm going to hold down Control and hit delete. And what that does is it deletes the segment that was highlighted and then moves the rest of the track back to the beginning of where that track used to be. So that makes it much faster when I'm cutting these things down to try to make them shorter or fit. So now when I play it, the music starts immediately. We get a beat or two before Thomas starts to speak. Another attention-getting tactic is to keep the volume at this low rate when he's speaking, at this low volume. And so we'll create an anchor point there, and then we're going to create another anchor point maybe here, and then raise the volume back up to 100%, up too high, or 90%. So now when it comes in, the music is hitting strong. You can hear it, and then it slowly fades down to when Thomas is speaking to that level that isn't covering up what he's saying. We're going to do the same thing here at the end when he's finished talking, especially because we have a lot more time when he's finished talking, where we're just staring at a screen. So we're going to do this and increase that back up to 90. That sounds nice. Sorry you guys can't hear it, but that works. Then we want the music to be done at the same time. Otherwise, we'll just be staring into a blank screen listening to music. So as soon as this is finished, we're going to split and delete the end of the video, and we're just going to have it really quickly fade out at the very end. I'm creating custom fades rather than using audio fade outs. They do the same thing, but it's sometimes just faster to create it how I want it. This is going to fade out a lot faster than this default one will, and that's the sound I'm looking for. So it fades up and then really quickly fades out right as the video ends. Okay, so there is my music. Any questions about that? More questions about audio points, anything like that?
We do have a couple follow-up questions for the audio. So one attendee wants to know if you can loop the audio track.
Sure, you can try. Some audio tracks loop better than others. There's some songs that clearly have a chorus kind of thing, and I will cut that chorus out and then put it on repeat to try to fill gaps. Your audience isn't always as dumb as you might think, though, and they'll notice and they'll think, that sounds looped, this sounds cheap, this is lame. But that is definitely an option you can try once or twice. I've done it. So
All right.
yeah, I mean, whatever you want to do.
So your mileage may vary. Good luck.
Yes.
And so then we had one other question about the audio. When you were showing us how to do the audio points, and you raised up the part of it, you were talking about how at the end of people's sentences they tend to trail down in volume, and so you raised it up a little bit. We had one attendee who says when they try to do that, the top of their audio zigzag stops at the green line, but yours went above it. And how did you make it do that? The answer is magic, guys. Andrew's magic.
Done. Next question. Okay, so you're saying that, let's say you were raising this section and this section, And as I'm dragging this up, the actual audio waves are moving above the,
Yes, I think that's what they're asking.
okay. It just depends on how loud your original file is.
So you need to interview louder people. That's the answer.
Increase the sensitivity of your microphone, things like that. I'm gonna, whoa, not remove all audio points. We're gonna come in and delete these ones that I'm not using. Whoops, bad order. Let's do this one next, then this one, then this one. Okay, another question?
All right, well, let's see. We do have, we've got some broader questions. We don't have any more specific audio ones. Is there anything else you wanted to show before we get into big
Yeah,
picture stuff?
we've got 7 minutes. I'm gonna run into closed captioning. It may
All
be
right.
opening a can that we just can't handle, but we'll try it anyway. So I'm gonna come in and
That's
open the
what
closed
the
captions
blog
panel.
is for.
That's
Anything
right.
we can't fit in, we'll put in the blog.
So closed captioning, if I click add caption, it will add it to whatever the top line is. Now, I told you guys about my habit of putting audio in the bottom. I'm going to actually move this here, and then I'm going to highlight everything in my project and move it up one line so that my music volume is right down here on the bottom. Now I can click this scales, and then when I hit add captions, it adds it to where that one used to be, right up here at the top. So I have an option with captions. If I have a script, I can actually paste the script in here, and we can, then I'll show you a blog about that, and then come through and sync that script with the video as I play it. For this one, that was a freehand interview. Thomas said whatever the heck he felt like saying, within reason. I'm going to need custom captions. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to make sure this caption starts when he starts speaking. And then I'm going to use this really cool tool, which is right here. It's this replay caption under the playhead. So if I play it, I'm going to have to take my headphones off. Just don't try to talk to me, Stephanie. If I push this play button, it plays the video on loop for the section that the caption is covered. So this whole sentence that he's saying is just being looped over and over and over again. So that makes it a little bit easier for me to come in and say, so our customizable courseware is, that's all he says. Then I'm going to hit the plus button, and it creates a new caption and plays the next section. A long process that takes a lot of, oh, he says really awesome individuals. Great. So now I'm going to stop. I'm going to hit that play button. And now when I play the video, it plays with his custom, oops, I forgot they're highlighted. You can't have them highlighted. Okay. So when I play it, it shows that closed caption playing across the bottom for the exact stuff we just typed. And it matches what is said because we had that measured while I was typing it. And I can do that while just watching the whole video. You get really sick of people talking if you're doing closed captions for long videos. But that's how you would do it, and it creates it all the way along. And if some of them end up being really short or really long, you can always come in, double click on this closed caption, and let's say we want a long, so we'll cut it, and we want it to be in this section, so we double click, paste a long, and then I can just move the separator between these two to where he finishes saying along. That way it plays right where it needs to be. Then if I want to, so if I go in here to export a local file, 720, and click next, it's going to say, hey, by the way, you have closed captions on here, and the way you're exporting it right now, they will be burned in, and you will not be able to remove these closed captions. If you don't want your closed captions on your video, then you'll hide them like that and then export it, and they won't show up. And then you'll want to export your closed captions here, settings, export captions, and then you name them. And then when you upload your video to YouTube or Facebook and go to this captions, closed caption settings, you can upload that file, and it'll be exactly what you made right there in under their system. Okay, that's all I have. 3 minutes. Hit me with your questions.
All right, Andrew. So let's start with if you use a Mac and also have Windows parallels, are there differences between the Mac and Windows versions of Camtasia 18?
With 18, they did everything they could to make them exactly the same. I think there may be a small difference between some of the visual effects. You may have more, we have a device frame that you can add. For example, here's Thomas in a device frame. So there's a computer frame, and you can change the kind of thing. Like here he is on an iPhone, or here he is on a MacBook Pro. Let's scale this out a little bit. So, I mean, there's those kinds of things that may be different in the Mac version, but they should be exactly the same. That's what TechSmith is bragging about, that they're the same now.
All right, good to know. This is a little bigger of a question that we might dive into more on the blog, but can you just give a couple points to, so Stephanie, not me, another Stephanie wants to know if there's an advantage to using Adobe Premiere Pro versus Camtasia. So if you want to talk maybe just like really quickly on a couple pros and cons, or, just say that you love Camtasia.
I want to stay impartial. I love both. Both are great. If I'm doing a project that's really, really quick and I just want it to, actually a better way, if I'm making a video for work that is a business video or an advertisement or something like that, I use Camtasia almost every time, especially if it's going to be going online to market something. It has great closed captioning software that can really get in there and make it go quickly. The behaviors make the text move and make professional things really, really quickly. If I was editing a motion picture or a personal project of that variety, I would use Premiere because it is more robust. There's a lot more customization to the workspace. The most customization I can get to my workspace here is detaching my canvas. And then I could put this on a different screen. You guys can't see it, but now I can make my timeline that much bigger. I mean, that's all the customization I have. I can shrink my properties panel. I can shrink my media panel. But the overall customization, Camtasia is a much smaller project, but sometimes that's beneficial when I'm working on small projects and want them to go quickly. Premiere is not the same story.
All right, we will leave it there. And then we had some questions about when applying markers, it seems to stay in that mode. So then whenever they click on something else, it automatically applies a marker. Have you had that problem, and do you know how to make it stop?
Totally. Get rid of the markers. There's this button here on the side. I'm going to wiggle my mouse. I'm sorry for some of you that it's too small. But there's this little tiny drop down. It says show or hide quiz or marker track. And I can drop that down. And I can, there's another drop down where I can select marker or quiz. And I accidentally, if I leave it up, I can accidentally click these marker buttons like crazy, and they drive me nuts. Markers have a place, usually with interactive videos. That's where I use my markers the most, and quizzes and things like that. But generally, I just make sure that that is hidden, that whole bar is not there, and that I'm not creating them. If you're accidentally creating markers by, I don't know, I think they even get rid of M being a marker point. Yeah, I'm not able to leave a marker with the letter M. So yeah, that's my secret. Hide it.
Great secret. Now everyone knows, though. All right, so we got some new questions that are a little more specific. Can you use those device frames within an existing video for a layered effect? I think they're talking about when you were showing how it appears on like an iPhone versus a desktop.
So let's take a small segment of this so it doesn't have to animate the whole thing. Visual effects device frame.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the question?
Can you use them within an existing video for a layered effect?
An existing video. So like if Thomas is talking about himself, so if it's like this, and then we shrink this video like this.
Yes, I think that's what they're asking.
You can do this, if that answers your question. Use the crop to crop it more. Oh, it doesn't crop very well. Okay, note, it doesn't crop this effect great. We're going to not crop it then.
Oh, okay. So if they want their speaker to appear to be holding a device with a second video within the frame. So it would be kind of like what you're showing right
It
now,
would be
but
very difficult.
yeah.
It would be
Sorry,
easier
Nancy.
to do to have them actually hold the tablet and then just superimpose the video on top of it,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
that sounds like a good idea. She says thought it would be a challenge, but you can try Andrew's other suggestion, and that might work better.
That's what we do with our cutout people. In our cutout people, we have them holding tablets or whiteboards, and then we just cut that section out and make it hollow so you can put whatever you want in there. With video, it's a little bit different. You just want to stick it right on top and have it live on top of that. But if they move or wiggle, then you're going to have that. You're going to have to track that as well.
So we look forward to seeing your masterpiece, Nancy, when you do that, and then we'll share it on our social media.
Do send it to us. I
Look
would
what
love
you
to see
learned to
how you
do
do
from our
that.
webinar. All right, so okay, we are over time. I'm going to ask one more question, and then, sorry everyone, we'll get to the other ones in the blog. So we have one question. How did you get the little loop that you typed from? What was the command to select that segment? So when you were doing the closed captioning, I think.
Sure. Okay, so in closed captions, I clicked add caption and it adds it at the playhead. And then to edit it, I double click on it itself. And now here's my typing section. And right here is that pretty little button that has the play with the circle. When you actually play it, they wiggle a little bit. Oh, I guess they spin all the way around. I've never paid attention to that part, too busy typing captions. Does that answer your question?
I think so. And then we will, all right, so everyone, thank you so much. By the way, Andrew, everyone thought that you were awesome. So thank you guys for attending. And I believe, Andrew, you have one closing
Oh,
slide that we
I
want to show
do.
everyone.
This is so cool. Let's show it to you by clicking the right buttons. This one.
Oh, Andrew, you were doing so well.
I was. Okay, here we go. There's your slide. So I made this video to advertise. This video is talking about Thomas. He's talking about customizable courseware, and that's what is there on the right.
So you will all actually see this video that Andrew edited today. We will be sharing it on our social media, along with some other videos that we've made to talk about customizable courseware, which is one of our awesome products. And if you're interested in that, check it out on our website, call in for a free demo. And as we mentioned earlier, everybody is getting a free account to the eLearning Brothers. And so you can go on our website and play around with some of our other templates. There's some Camtasia stuff on there, lots of fun stuff.
Awesome. Check it out.
All right. Thank you all and have a great day.
See you next time.